It was only a matter of time until I had to review one of Disney's desperate attempts to cash in on nostalgia. Now, with Cinderella, you could argue that that was more Disney's attempt to counter some of the reimagined fairy tale movies and TV shows that were being put on the market by their competitors. But here, this just feels like just yet another punch thrown by Disney as part of the perpetual boxing match that is Disney versus Warner Brothers. I mean, this has been going on since back in the day, in the golden age of animation, and it really hasn't stopped. All of that aside, how does this latest live action adaptation of Rudyard Kipling's stories hold up? Well, not as well as you might hope if you're going off of the trailers. This film starts out pretty strongly. I mean, it makes allusions to the music from the animated feature, but it's not super overt about it. It gives us a believable world with a lot of engaging characters that we enjoy watching. Even the villain, Shere Khan, is given a moderately compelling backstory that they end up ruining by the halfway point of the film. The biggest thing that bothers me about this film is that it's so desperate to pander to fans of the animated film, often to the point that the film will just grind to a halt in the name of that fan service. I mean, first off, if they wanted to have musical numbers in this movie, why didn't they just make it as a musical? I mean, seriously, this is a problem with a lot of films where they're just like, oh, well, we want to have these musical numbers, but we don't want to make it a musical because people don't like musicals. They think it's weird. But here, we just get a desperate attempt by Disney to basically have it both ways, where the film starts out as a pretty straightforward live-action adaptation. No music, but has a lot of the same characters and the same antics that we love from the previous versions of The Jungle Book that we have seen. And the scene that pretty much exemplifies this problem is when Mowgli has encountered King Louie, because the scene in which he's talking to King Louie is shot in a very harsh, dark environment, almost kind of making an homage to The Godfather, as they pretty much have harsh lighting. His face is mostly in shadow, his body is mostly in shadow, but the parts that you do see give him kind of the appearance of a mafia boss, thus the idea that it's alluding to The Godfather. And during the scene in which King Louie is supposed to be intimidating and scary and not jovial and happy like in the animated film, you then have him suddenly break into song for a musical number that not only feels out of place, but is visually boring, because you can tell the location is not conducive to a musical number, because there's not that much to look at, because of how dark it is, because of how harsh the lighting is. It doesn't gel, it doesn't work, as you can tell the people making this movie didn't plan to have a musical number, but probably had it railroaded in by a bunch of executives. They went to the trouble of recording new versions of a lot of the songs from the animated film that really, it wouldn't have been that hard for them to just say, hey, let's make this a full-on musical. We've already re-recorded these new versions of these songs, let's just put them in the movie. They've already did it for 2 of them, they may as well put the 3rd one they recorded in. Speaking of that 3rd song, while the casting for this film was pretty spot on for the most part, I mean, Ben Kingsley as Bagheera, Bill Murray as Baloo, Idris Elba as Shere Khan, the biggest misstep would have to be Scarlett Johansson as Kaa. I mean, Kaa is a character that is known for being sneaky, devilish, and most importantly, mesmerizing, hypnotic. And I can see that maybe that's kind of what they were going for with her voice. But the performance we get from Scarlett Johansson as Kaa is just dull and lifeless. It sounds like we're just getting a bunch of cold reads. And it's disappointing. And even the recorded version of Trust in Me, which, by the way, only plays during the end credits and not in the film proper, which it would have worked if it was in the film proper because it showed that there was a little bit more life to it, just feels tacked on. And it has that same kind of dull and lifeless quality that they're just doing it because it was in the animated version, not because they actually wanted to. The only song that they shoehorned into the film that they actually made work was Bare Necessities. And I mention this because they basically establish it. They introduce it in a way that makes sense. They basically establish, oh, it's just a song that the character of Baloo likes to sing to himself throughout the day. And the way they kind of work it into a number feels natural. It feels organic. It just feels like, oh, he sings the song to himself. So naturally, he kind of teaches Mowgli the song over the course of the time they spend together. It felt natural. It felt organic. It felt like actually part of the movie. To the film's credit, it does a good job of introducing us to the characters, having them come across as fully fleshed out people, for lack of a better term. Yeah, I know they're animals, but they feel like actual characters, like actual people or things that you may encounter in life with their own personalities and histories and backstories, and even the structure of the film works with that. It has this nice flow where it doesn't actually feel dull or doesn't feel like it's slowed down until the third act, where everything just falls apart in terms of the narrative and even visually to a certain extent. I can't shake the feeling that this film was the victim of some sort of executive meddling. Like, maybe they wanted to do a straightforward adaptation of the original stories by Rudyard Kipling, but then they were told by Disney executives to shoehorn in as many things as possible from the animated film, so that way they can generate more interest in the animated film and drive more DVD sales when they decide to do some sort of double feature combo pack, because we know Disney's probably going to try something like that. And it's a shame too, because there are a lot of elements about this film that I like. There are a lot of things that did work. I mean, the key characters, Ka notwithstanding, were well cast, and the CGI for the animals is that high level quality that we've come to expect from Weta Digital, and even the cinematography has some very, very well shot moments that make the theatrical experience almost worth it. If you enjoyed either the animated movie or the live action version from 1994, this film is a good hybrid of the two. You have the talking animal characters that are compelling and interesting from the animated version, but then you have a lot of the action and atmosphere from the live action version, and it basically is a nice way to kind of bridge the two until the third act, where everything just kind of falls apart. With that in mind, I wouldn't recommend paying full price to see this film. I mean, if you want to see it in theaters, don't pay more than about $7 per person. That's the average ticket price for a 2D matinee adult ticket. I mean, it's not worth the 3D because there's not really anything about the cinematography that would have been enhanced by 3D. It's not really worth IMAX for the same reason, and avoid Atmos. Believe me, the Dolby Atmos theaters, they just kill the sound mix for a lot of these movies because a lot of movies aren't mixed for the Dolby Atmos theater. It's kind of the same case with a lot of films that are converted to 3D. When they're not part of the planning of the actual making of the film, it's not going to work. So avoid Atmos. That's my cautionary warning for you for the week. All of this said, The Jungle Book gets a 3 out of 5. So that's it for this episode of Romney's Reviews. Thank you for watching. I'll see you all next time.